Perfect. Awesome. Happy summer, everyone, and hello. Thank you for joining us for today's town hall meeting. My name is Riley McCormack, and my pronouns are he, him, or they, them, and I am the president slash board chair of Rainbow City Performing Arts. And today we are excited to share with you all the work the board has been doing to move forward since adopting our strategic plan about a year ago. So our title today is Organizational Structure for Tomorrow. All right, let's jump into the topics we'll cover. So we'll start with a structural overview. So we'll present our organization structure and how our structure started and where we're moving toward. Um, then, yep. And then we'll talk about moving from a working board to a fundraising board and what this means for our organization. And then we'll move into the critical staff roles or leadership roles and what their duties and responsibilities entail. And then we'll talk about the growth and important roles that directors and managers will have in our organization and do currently have as well right now. And then finally, we'll discuss the support of Rainbow City Guild and what it has to offer and how you can get involved. And like I briefly mentioned, we do have a question and answer section at the end of the presentation, so I will turn your mics back on for that. You may notice that there is another feature in your Teams. It's under Q&A. It's a new feature we discovered. So there's a message in there. So if you have a question and you want to write it down before you forget, please use that feature and type it in the chat, and we'll get to the question when we have our question and answer section, or write it down on a piece of paper, whatever floats your boat there. All right. Um, Next slide. Yeah. So why is this needed? This is needed for writing, so we'll start with writing past wrongs. So the demands we placed on board members in the past were pretty overwhelming and we asked a lot from them. And when we asked folks to step in the board roles, we didn't communicate clearly how much responsibility they were taking in and how much was actually going to be involved in being a board member. So naturally, this means that board members would get burnt out, leave the board, and not return to our organization. Unprecedented growth. So over the last 2 years, we've grown at a really fast rate, which is great for our ensembles, but not so great for our leadership. Our leadership's been trying to keep up and do the work as best we can, but our members have outgrown our leadership. Um, and as ensembles outgrowing, that outgrows the work that the board can do. And we did begin preparing for this growth prior to the pandemic, but then once the pandemic hit, it slowed everything down. So we're finally at that place where we can move forward in our growth. Increasing our scope, and as we grow, we're needing to increase to a higher level of professional engagement, such as building partnerships, building a volunteer platform, recognizing our donors, and securing sponsorships. And these are needing to be done in order to sustain our organization. So this becomes with seizing more opportunities. So with those changes, which we'll learn about shortly to our org, we'll have the opportunity to make those connections and get bigger and better opportunities that come our way. And so for a long time, we had to say no because we just didn't have the funds, we didn't have the support, we don't have fill in the blank with whatever. But now we're at a point where we can say yes and we can do it because we're growing and our leadership is growing, so we can provide that support. And with that said, I'll turn it over to Damien, who will talk about our structure.
Well, hello, everyone. My name is Damian Hall. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the Executive Director of Rainbow City Performing Arts. Our organization has been structured in a very traditional way that many small arts organizations are, with a working board of directors and a contracted staff to lead our program activity. Each of our ensembles is a program, and the board members perform the essential work of the organization to operate. Legally, board members cannot be paid for their work and have fiduciary responsibility for the organization. But evolution is slow, as it depends on the expertise of the volunteer holding the role. Responsibility for each aspect of operating the organization, and thus all ensembles, fell onto individual director roles, with the president's role basically undefined. With less paid staff, it keeps costs low, relying on the zeal of the recipients of the work of the nonprofit to ensure that it continues to operate. But it does leave us in a risky situation whenever things don't work out just as we intend them to. Our artistic leadership is paid for their artistic work, but we also expected them to do other work to ensure a well-run ensemble outside of their primary paid work. These roles help uplift younger and often internal candidates to achieve as emerging leaders. However, with few support mechanisms, limited funding, success also relied on someone that was driven by the mission. Now I'm going to tell you a little story through our evolving org chart. In the summer of 2019, we knew things weren't quite right. Riley and I were both on the board, and we held a key board retreat guided by our president at the time, Betsy Smith, and our artistic director, Tim Norris. There, we evaluated our structure as it had evolved to that point, which you see here on the screen. And the problems we were experiencing back then, when our organization was less than half the size as it was today, were quite apparent. As I mentioned before, work was structured essentially into silos. So it was difficult to keep oversight or to help train and assist other board members in being successful. There was discomfort to offer help as it would be seen to be offering criticism. If there was a vacancy, there was no backup to do their work. And frankly, everyone was overwhelmed with the scope of their own roles anyway. Some years, entire areas like marketing and development were just totally in the dark, leading to stagnant revenues. Looking at the artistic side, our ensembles also did not have equitable staffing, and there were only directors to lead the ensemble, no managers. So board members needed to do very direct duties like setting up chairs before rehearsal, making announcements, the things that you see managers doing in ensembles today. Not all ensembles, though, received equal services. Some ensembles had board members supporting them, others didn't. That led to the development of unofficial manager roles in some ensembles, which gave us a pattern that we could look to. But we couldn't afford to pay for emerging ensembles to have their own paid staff as well, which stunted their growth. Roles across the organization had high turnover, frequently burning out our most committed stakeholders to leave and never return. It caused stress, rancor, and people got hurt. It wasn't the fault of our beleaguered board members. The structure itself was not suitable for the scope of our organization. We set a course over 2 days to change our org in numerous ways that would fall over the next 5 years. Our first was to introduce ensemble managers as a new title designation. And just as we were about to roll that out in March of 2020, the pandemic shut us down and our entire plan was put on ice. We didn't know what was going to happen any more than anyone else in the world. All we could do is wait for activity to return, and we were sure at some point we would all come together again and we could get things back on track. Well, it ended up being in early 2022 when that happened. We were prevented from gathering in person due to cascading issues with the pandemic and the recovery. But in early 2022, it hit the ending of the term of most of our board members about when we were coming back to our first in-person rehearsals for the concert band. Most of the board members that had served during the pandemic were coming at the end of their terms, including our friend Riley here, who was president at the time. I became the next president of the board and seated alongside many of the folks that are still on the board today. The shutdown crisis didn't end our aims to continue our restructure. In fact, it accentuated the need even greater. Our organization was reeling, and we had a huge task ahead to restart our operations, establish a reinvigorated culture, and prepare to welcome hundreds of new members we didn't know yet would come. It was time to pick up where we left off on our work. So before we even restarted operations of our ensembles, we established managers in each one. And we made our first initial pay increase to our directors, doubling the pay of some, others paying for the first time. This took some of the pressure off the overwhelmed board so that we could focus on restarting the organization itself and let the ensembles operate more on their own. Another key aspect of our 2019 board retreat was changing our mission to be more focused on social justice. To help us improve our policy and provide a new voice to leadership, we established the Director of DEI. Even with the addition of members at large as well, we could not keep up with the pace and the needs of the organization. The pressure was too much, and some roles like marketing remained perpetually empty. I did everything I could to recruit for some of these roles, but they were too much. It was expecting too much of volunteers. With some of these roles being perpetually empty, it severely harmed our concert ticket sales and our revenue. Other times, in other roles, turnover was natural, but it would lead to stress and sometimes chaotic results for other board members as we tried to fill the gap, find a new person to step in. We didn't have a robust structure to allow folks to step away without there being an impact. The old ways of living in silos and accepting our best weren't enough to rebuild. Through our history, there was no tradition of our president working directly within other areas of the board. In fact, it was pretty much the opposite. But I needed to become a crisis manager to avert a full disaster. I couldn't deny that having served two previous terms on the board, I had more experience in almost every area than anyone coming in knew. And they sought my guidance. They sought training. Uh, they wanted my help in order to make them more successful. In the wake of the pandemic, we all had to count on each other. It was also unusual in that all but one board member started at the same time, the same 2-year terms, rather than half the board already being in place for continuity as the rest of us joined. So we definitely built, whoops, we definitely built up a team, a natural team that came together, and we were able to not only pull us out of a tailspin, but we kept climbing fast. We really didn't think about what that represented, but we all knew that it was working. Even working as a team, it was too much to keep up, let alone to be contemplative. Policy took a back seat to the need to keep up with the pace of events. Some of our old problems came up again by overtaxing the board. The team structure did help with retention, but it was hard and stressful to keep the pace going. An inevitable collapse was to come if we did not rethink the structure on a deeper level. And as I mentioned, we were all on the same terms. So it was this past March that was the D-Day when the entire board was going to turn over all at once. So we had to think of how to pivot and how to focus on the future. So last summer, the board passed its first ever strategic plan, in which we developed in my final months as president of the board. In it, we charted forward the course we needed for success and our performing at Benaroya Hall was a key component. The result of that year-long plan was to be this fall restructure that we're presenting to you today. We contacted 501 Commons, a local nonprofit that offers consulting and services on a sliding scale, so it was affordable to us. They put us in touch with two local professionals who helped guide us to structure both our staff and board composition according to best practices and legal requirements. Our rebranding was another core component of this restructure so that some of our staff could operate with guidelines and tools that they need to present a cohesive and visible nonprofit focused on its mission. We also needed to try everything when it came to seeking revenue. Our mission demanded that we support our staff who are part of our community and deserve the same pay that other organizations provide. Lastly, I stepped down as president, and my friend Riley here stepped up to be president once again. This allowed me to serve in this volunteer executive director role for this whole last season and help to establish our new structure and our new culture, ensure that our board is functioning as its own cohesive unit, and we can start to build that culture for the future as well. So, what is our new structure? Well, it's not unlike a lot of other nonprofits. We just need to look to model organizations that are larger than us. Like many other nonprofits you know and love have gone through, this same transition is just like these other nonprofits have done, including Seattle Choruses, the men's and women's chorus over 20 years ago, and more recently, Seattle Pride. Will still be led by a board, but it'll have revised expectations. Starting from the top, this creates more capacities for growth and creates roles that are more familiar to people outside our organization. A focused board of traditional structure helps to align the entire organization towards our mission and lets staff focus on creating the best functioning organization. Now, let's look at how this focus affects staffing needs. You see that to properly distribute work requires a much more robust staff structure. Under the executive director, we need managers or directors of different departments, along with staff below them to carry out dozens of roles that call for area expertise. Our artistic director, Christopher Hansen, has also helped to drive more balance and equity with our artistic staff and has expanded roles there as well. With two separate staff lines, it creates intersecting responsibility for operations and full oversight. Without the board members being involved, regular operations are maintained and expertise will drive innovation. It encourages growth to support more professionalized support and to create more community impact. With our full org chart soon to be in place, we will be a much more robust structure so that we can be ready for whatever the world has to throw at us, and our community will be able to stay strong together. We'll also stop burning out our most committed supporters, and we'll have the capacity to welcome so many more members of our family. Now we'll go into a little bit more detail about the levels of leadership in our organization before we take some time for questions.
Hello again. Awesome. So now let's talk about our new board and what it will look like. So as we've mentioned, we're transitioning from a working to a funding board. And this means that our efforts will be focused more on oversight for our leadership, more oversight with our budget and organization as a whole. The board will be more policy driven, so creating more policies that align with our mission and our guiding force for the vision of our organization. And lastly, we will be shifting to focusing our efforts on fundraising and securing funds rather than on daily operational tasks. And as Damien mentioned, many nonprofit and arts organizations have moved to this model of having a fundraising board. So it is something that has been done before and something we can do effectively. And so we'll be more matured board focus and um, really focused on being more of a supported board. And so what's changing within our board? There's a lot of exciting changes happening. So our board currently meets on a monthly basis. And so there's a lot of work that, gets done. Some months we have a full board agenda meeting and other months we have not a full agenda. And so we're moving to a quarterly meeting. So instead of meeting, so this will be every 3 months, we'll meet as a full board. The goal will be that our executive leadership board, so the chair, treasurer, secretary, and vice chair will continue to meet on a monthly basis, but then as a whole board will be more effective in just getting things done. And then the next thing is a board agreement, which the board has recently passed. And this just lays out the responsibility of the board member that the board member holds to the organization and the responsibility that our organization holds to the board members. Um, it also includes a board member code of conduct. So those are really exciting changes. And so as I mentioned early on, the responsibilities or the communication with the board members coming on, this agreement will be that communication piece. And then we have a pledge form that we're creating. And so the goal is to pledge to to give an amount that would be meaningful to a board member. And then the other goal would be going to get making a commitment to seeking funding. So going out and fundraising a certain amount of money as well. Again, that emphasis on being a funding board. And then lastly, there will be no expectation of staff work. So as Damien explained, we have our executive org leadership and our artistic side. So all the staff work will be within those two departments or those two areas. And so the board will really be focusing on, the funding and the supporting of the executive director and the artistic director. Um, this is a pivotal time for our board with these changes, and I'm excited to step into this and see the changes that we can make with this with our board. Okay, let's move on and talk about our staff. So we are moving to hourly staff. So these changes are occurring for our higher level leadership roles, so our artistic director and executive director. So as we continue to grow, we need to do our due diligence of following the law, and legally central staff, as mentioned, artistic director and executive director must become employees. Um, and so due to our limited funds, the scope of the AD and the ED roles will also be limited. However, as we continue to grow and secure funds to pay for these two key leaders, we'll look to increase the scope of the roles. So growth in time means growth for our org as well, more funding, more collaborations. The more money we have, the more we can pay these roles. And again, these two leadership leadership roles, the artistic director and executive director, are really key in making sure that the executive leadership functions in the departments, and then the artistic director leads our artistic ensemble and staff. Um, so and the importance again, the importance of these roles is the ED with giving them more scope and more hours. The ED can write more grants, and the AD can develop more programs. Both the AD and ED will be paid to do high level work. And again, we'll do less work, less volunteer work that can be done by volunteers, and we'll provide that stable oversight, which we need and are doing right now. And then lastly, both will be responsible to implement long-term vision of the org and just continue to use our strategic plan as a guiding resource for moving our vision forward. And let's move to the next slide. So let's talk about the employee duties. We'll start with our artistic director. We've had an artistic director for many, many years, but we really haven't defined how this role differs from a board member or from, our executive director now. And we've placed a lot of responsibility on our artistic director in the past. And so, recently we've really dived deep into what does an AD do? So an AD will be responsible for ensemble collaborations. A recent example is helping plan the summer ensemble exhibition camp, working with ensemble directors and having oversight over artistic budget, planning the themes for the season and creating seasonal calendar, and then facilitating our partnerships with guest artists, clients we're performing with or for, as well as our musical partnership with UCUCC and our partner church. And then lastly, leading the formation of new ensembles and programs, as well as supporting our current ensemble directors and managers. And then on the other side, equal to our AD will be our executive director. Um, and so the executive director, one of the key was implemented in September 2023. And again, we did not have a clear understanding of how the executive director would fit into our organization structure. But after many months, we've discovered that the key element for this role really will be personnel management for the entire org. So providing orientation and support for directors and managers. Um, Additionally, the ED will be responsible for implementing the org's vision through strategic planning, facilitating partnerships with other nonprofits and corporations for sponsorships, fundraising endeavors, collaborations, and so on, and also approving marketing content and applying our brand where necessary. And lastly, our executive director will focus on our messaging, meaning overseeing the materials we put out to the public and honing in on how we speak about our mission, as well as the appeals, the result of our messaging, and deciding on how we talk about our needs for support. Both the ED and the AD duties play important roles in the function of our organization. And I'll turn it back over to Damien.
Our directors and our managers are our core leaders on the ground. They have the full power to lead their areas while following policy and with the support of someone above them to help them coordinate and increase their capacity. It allows for more stable and professional operations with regular meetings and planning ahead. Established working relationships between departments and ensembles can build, and oversight of activities leads to better outcomes. Each department or program has a limited capacity of 2 to 10 volunteer roles before further professionalization will really be needed. Our organization currently has 8 programs: marching band, drumline, color guard, concert band, pep band, jazz band, orchestra, and chamber music. We have 4 departments: administration, marketing, development, and operations. Now remember, these designations are overall umbrella designations. Our programs sometimes have multiple ensembles in them. Um, our departments are a singular cohesive unit, but they often include many different related functions that in a large professional nonprofit like Seattle Symphony would be an entire department of people, a dozen or more. But here we have one paid manager, or they could become a director. And below them, we have a whole bunch of volunteers. So I'm going to go through briefly what each of these different departments do, since this is a very new thing to our structure. Our administration department, they operate our business functions. They include essentially 2 different board members, the director of finance and the director of records, as well as new areas such as volunteer management. Uh, Also, pretty much all of our policy and procedure apparatus is included in the administration department, and they also handle all outreach and documentation as in terms of business function. Our development department is the one that earns all the money. That's all they're focused on, is generating more revenue to help pay for our programs, help pay for our staff. They foster donor and patron support and growth, which means paying attention to our donors and patrons and thanking them, inviting them to our next events, and helping to foster those aspects of our community. They also do grant writing, which is something that we have had a lot more success at this year. We've earned close to $50,000 in grants over this past year, which is a lot more than ever because we almost never applied for grants in the past because we didn't have capacity or expertise. It also is managing special events. Special events are a jargon term for a big fancy fundraiser like a gala, but sometimes smaller ones. Uh, we have goals to have more special events throughout the year that are less taxing on our staff, and this new structure will allow us to have more capacity for that. Our marketing department is similarly a very new thing to us. Marketing takes a lot of professional and experiential expertise. Uh, Our marketing department has grown over this last year, and they now operate a multi-channel marketing operation that supports our events, not just our Benorand concerts, but events for all our ensembles, and we're continuing to build out those structures and the documentation we need. It helps to give a cohesive presentation to the world of who we are and what we represent. And it also helps us to track paid advertising, which this year was the first we had systematically done that. And we learned some areas that are very useful to us and we earn more money than we pay, and other ones that didn't work. And the only way you know is if you try. And last but not least is our operations department. They offer critical program support. They manage everything from equipment to venues to online tools. Uh, our director of membership will be part of the operations department. Our information technology is part of the operations department. Our sheet music, the librarian, is part of this department. They also are in charge of contract and venue oversight. So we would not function very long without the folks in the operations department. So who is the backbone of all this? Well, it's our core of volunteers, the Rainbow City Guild. You may have heard about this recently, but it is our new volunteer program for ongoing roles in the organization. They comprise every department other than the manager, and they are in every section of every ensemble because our section coordinators, formerly known as section leaders, are also in the guild. As these roles are all very important, we ask a commitment of at least 5 hours per month towards that area if you commit to holding that role. We see guild members as core to our ability to operate, so they get to play in our ensembles without paying dues, as well as getting other benefits. These roles often have a professional equivalent, and as we aim to provide a more professional level product, we help to build skills of volunteers to enable our growth more broadly. Each department is really a small community in itself, and guild members grow a team spirit and a camaraderie with their fellows. Though our departments are just now growing, there is already a culture of mutual support growing in each one. If you want to learn more about what it means to join the Guild, you can read about it at rainbowcity.org/guild. Or if you want to see the open roles that we have available now and more that will be posted soon, you can go to rainbowcity.org/jobs.
So we're back to this slide. Hopefully we've answered why this is needed. So this slide is just here as to reflect on the beginning of our presentation. And so we'll move into impacts. Like we said earlier, more growth means more opportunities for our org, more support for our staff, um, more equitability, and even dispersion of work. This allows for natural growth to continue as we continue to grow our programs, departments, and board. Um, by creating deeper and more meaningful connections with donors, volunteers, patrons, and all around shareholders. This also will create more opportunity to engage in partnerships. So really, this structure has a huge impact on just who we are in the community in the greater Seattle area, and it will also, impact our staff and feeling more supported. And as a whole, we can be connected more individually and together in Rainbow City Performing Arts.
This organization runs on a yearly cycle, and those of us playing in these ensembles put forward a similar amount of energy towards our performances each season. But what changes is how the organization supports that effort. With a better structure, our musicians' energy has more power to make an impact. Also, monetary support of us has more power through that increased impact. With this structure, we'll be seen by so many more people and change people's lives who might otherwise be darker had they not become a part of our family. We can be a platform for marginalized artists to have a voice on the big stage, for the stadium crowd, or an intimate jazz club. With a more robust structure and sharing the work it takes for this organization to thrive, it increases the impact of all the effort we put in as musicians, down to the extra practice or the extra gig you might play. The purpose of any nonprofit is to fulfill its mission. And with a board that is not encumbered by an overwhelming amount of staff duties, they will finally be able to focus on steering this organization towards greater sustainability.
So, with that said, our mission, I'm going to go ahead and read it for everyone. We are an organization of performance ensembles, creating a diverse and inclusive environment for musical expression that promotes the equity and visibility of people in the LGBTQIA plus community. This is the mission that was created in 2019 during the board retreat when we came together. So our mission is what drives the foundation of our organizational structure. It is the passion behind our artistic staff, executive org leadership, as well as the board. And so with this mission, we can create a clear vision ahead. We can be more engaged in our communities, make music, make deeper connections with our friends, and make a difference in the greater Seattle and Pacific Northwest areas. I'm excited for what our future holds. We have a strong community in our band family already, and these changes will only enhance that. It will uplift and welcome more community and contribute to our success. With equal distribution of work between our artistic staff and executive org staff, as well as more support from the board, our volunteers and staff will feel more supported. Increasing equitable pay and creating more stability. By securing funds, we can establish more meaningful partnerships and say yes to those opportunities that are waiting out there for us. And finally, our largest shareholders, and um, and finally, our largest shareholders are our members. And in this transition will improve support and again, create more opportunities for us to come together. As an organization, our future is bright and filled with many possibilities, and I'm excited to see where we continue to grow from here.
Are you as inspired as I am by this organization? I discovered Rainbow City in 2009, and just like you, I realized that there was really something special here. The more committed parts of our community that we can gather in this critical time, the stronger we will be when we keep moving forward into our great future. You can join the Guild with a minimum commitment of 5 hours per month of volunteering. You can join our new board and commit to being a steward of our finances and our culture. You can keep telling the world about what we're doing, like sharing news about our performances and our fundraising campaigns through your network. we all have more power to make change happen. But it goes beyond talking about us like we're any other community ensemble because we're not like most other community ensembles in Seattle. It seems like around every corner here there's another orchestra or concert band, and yet we're unique and special because our mission is not merely to perform great music, but to create a community based on harmony and support. Don't be afraid to talk about how this organization has made your life better. Visibility comes from having a voice. Thank you so much, everyone. This is the culmination of over a year's work by many people, and I especially want to thank Riley McCormick, our president, our artistic director, Christopher Hansen, our vice president, Shelley Siegfried, and the rest of our board, past and present, without whom we would not be here today. So we welcome your questions and your comments. If you do see the Q&A on your screen next to the chat, please do use that. And we do have one question from Flutrange. Riley, do you want to?
Yeah. So what is Rainbow City Pep Band? Is that Riot or a new ensemble? Rainbow City Pep Band is still in formation. It is not Riot. Rain City Riot is owned by Rain FC, and so Rain City Riot can only perform with the Rain or with a public or partnered with, like for Hunkfest, we performed under Rain City Riot. Do you have more to add, Damien?
Yeah, Rain City Riot, we do not own the trademark and we
Yeah.
do not control when we can use that title of that band. And so it was desired by the staff of Rain City Riot last year for us to have an alternate name of the band that could be used for other gigs if we choose to have them. And that name was chosen to be Rainbow City Pet Band in a nod to Renegade Pet Band, one of our early ensembles. And so the reference here is just to the program. Our programs are titled after a class of ensembles, Pet Band. And so Rain City Riot is part of that program. But we're not changing the name of Rain City Riot. It is staying exactly as it is.
Mhm. Thanks, Damien. Any other questions? Love questions. No question is dumb. All questions are welcome. How are we going to facilitate the growth of members to be section coordinators? Do you want to take this one, Damien?
So this has been a historic problem. We have not had trainings and orientations. Our section coordinators have had very little support. I shouldn't say that. They have had great support sometimes and no support other times. It's been very inconsistent. And so part of establishing them as part of the guild, part of establishing the guild itself, is that we're committing to building an HR infrastructure for this organization. It will not be an HR department because that needs to be something that's outside of the infrastructure. We can't afford that yet. But we do need to build some basic processes that workers should have, like job descriptions, orientations, trainings. And so these things are going to be coming to our section coordinators as well. I've already talked with Christopher, our artistic director, and he is definitely planning for us to have a big training session, but we're just trying to figure out when that could be and what kind of space we can get for that.
Good question. Any other questions? You can also unmute and just ask your question. You don't have to write it in the chat. Pamela,
Yeah.
ask your question.
Hey. Well, how are we going to recruit and or retain the new fundraising board? I mean, who are those people? How do we get them? What do they commit to? It just seems like a big unknown. And if someone came to me and said, "Hey, we really want you to be on the board, and by the way, you got to raise $5,000 or whatever the number is," I don't know. That seems very ominous, and I don't know. Can you explain more about how that might happen?
Yeah, so we do have a board recruitment. We'll be implementing our board recruitment tactics, I guess you could call them, come August, and then the new board will ideally be voted in September. And it's really just, if someone is interested in the board. We don't want the 5,000 to be the reason that someone dissuades from being on the board. But that 5,000 isn't you have 5,000 in your pocket. It's that you're going to fundraise that 5,000. So you can, Betsy in the past has done you where she's played her oboe 19 measures and has raised money. So it could be as simple as a little fundraiser like that. It could be emailing sponsors and just obtaining sponsorship. So there's many ways that someone can fundraise that $5,000 if that's the goal amount that we set for each board member. And really, it's just going to be the current board members going out, or if anyone here knows somebody who'd be a good fit for our board, we would invite you to, share my email with them, share Damien's email with them, and we will make that connection with them and talk more about what it means to be on the board. And really, it's more being a board member is really, again, going to be about our policies and focusing more on that. And again, being the fundraising gurus of the board. Um, and again, we don't want anyone to be dissuaded from fundraising. It's very common, and there are many ways that we can go about that.
Let me put this in a little context. Our board right now, they're workers. They
Mhm.
don't provide funding for our organization, meaning they don't, some donate. Don't get me wrong. Most of us are donors, most of us that have been on the board. They don't have time to find more money. They don't have time to focus on fundraising. They don't have time to get sponsors. The point of moving all the staff work off our board members is to give them time. We're not looking for a board of rich people. We want some rich people. We do like people who can just donate to us and help fund our operations, but there's more than one way to get funding. This week, as a volunteer who is doing a lot of work, I created this whole presentation. I got a $5,000 sponsorship for our organization for this fall. So in 1 week, I got that minimum amount that we're hoping that folks will commit to fundraising. To get that, I had to, for 9 months, make friends with somebody who I knew was working for a company and was attending our concerts and loved it. And all I had to do was talk to her and tell her, we were interested in what she had to do. And now we have a $5,000 sponsor. I can help you. That's the job of an executive director. Executive directors manage down and they also manage up. Executive directors are the biggest supporter for the board, helping them to learn how they can do their jobs well, how they can support the organization. I will be feeding those board members opportunities all year long in ways that they can get all kinds of money. In fact, this last year I was doing that as well. But our board members were beleaguered and overwhelmed. They didn't have time to do these things to find more funding. But in the future, they will be, and we're asking them to commit to that. The commitment is to give an amount that is meaningful to you. So don't think that to join our board, you need to cut a $5,000 check. That's not what it means. You'll have a pledge form with many options of how you think that you can raise that amount of money, like generating a sponsorship, donating a bunch of stuff for our gala that earns money. Uh, there's lots of ways. So that's our job now that we've sort of announced this whole thing, is to help folks understand this isn't as scary as it seems. It's making a commitment to be a leader for the organization.
Thank you, Damien.
Thank you,
Um, I
Pamela.
will I will add, Pamela, also that we will have an orientation for the board. It's not we're gonna have you join the board and be like, okay, good luck, bye. We will have more orientation, and like Damien said, he will also be supporting the board and providing those opportunities, and that's his job, is to go and create those partnerships, as mentioned with nonprofit and corporations as well. Betsy, what does the budget for this look like? Do you mean in terms of the board, in terms of the organization structure? What part of the budget are you referring
Well,
to?
that's a good question, because I didn't know if there was one budget or two budgets. So it sounds like there's two budgets.
No, there's one. We have our main budget. We have our budget, and we are creating our budget for our stat. Like, we'll have one large budget, and then it'll be sectioned out. So we'll have a staffing budget, a budget for our staff, a budget for our programs, and then an overarching budget for like the org. So so for example, our directors and managers in the departments will get equal pay that our directors and managers get on the artistic side. And so everything will be equitable in pay for our budget across the board on both sides of it. Board members, as you know, Betsy, cannot be paid. So they still will be volunteers as well. Um, yeah, does that answer your question, or do you want more detail? That answers it. Okay, great.
And to make clear, the AD and the AD and ED will be hourly employees, but we're
Yeah.
going to be pretty low rate per hour to start out. That's sort of how we can make this work, is we're willing to work for barely more than minimum wage, uh, or a limited number of hours. And as the organization grows, we can grow that budget.
And again, those two positions will also be the same rate too. They'll be our highest level of pay staff, but they'll be at the same rate. Good question, Betsy. Other questions?
Looks like Samuel had a question next up
Oh yeah.
after Hans's first one.
More of a comment to say that I love the new branding, really unifies all the ensembles visually, and it looks so good. Yay, I'm glad you like it. Thank you for the comment. Well, like it. And then Hans has a question. How would this new structure help us get more bodies and seats at our concerts? Great question. Do you want to take that one, Damien?
Well, we part of it is that we've already started to live out this structure. We have a marketing department. We have a marketing manager, Tracy Bliss, who is the manager of our marching band, is also our marketing manager. And we have 5 volunteers in marketing as well as myself. And so we are just steadily, slowly improving our skills, our processes. It A social media post goes through up to 4 hands before it gets posted up. And we're posting multiple posts per week. For every campaign, we're posting about 15 social media posts, 4 or 5 emails, a lot of print materials. So to answer your question in terms of marketing, it's just something we build and we keep building. But there's more to it than that. We There's a big part of our development department that is also about getting butts in seats. We gave out a lot of tickets last year to nonprofits, to key folks in our community who would talk about our work and share around to other folks. We gave tickets to youth groups. And so we're going to continue that this year. There is a job posted on our website called Patron Coordinator. Their only job is to give out free tickets, all the free tickets they can possibly give out. Because we have a 2,500 seat room, we may as well use every seat we can. So we are doing some work to try to get some more butts and seats this year. There will be an announcement soon from Christopher about our new season, which will talk a lot more about our theme, but also our pricing. And so you can look for that pretty soon.
And I think we'll also go heavy on season ticket holders, and offer that as well. So more season ticket holders means more people in the seats, and then they invite their friends, and they invite their friends, and so really it's just a domino effect. Our first concert at Benaroya, we've had over 1,000, and it was people, just hearing about us for the first time. So, again, the brand and the logo being new and being more unified also will bring more people to our concert too, because more people will see us, and so it's just a matter of like spreading the word about who we are. So, just if you're proud, I'm very proud of this organization. Share all the good things coming. I even marketed us up today to a senior who graduated from high school. Um, and then Hans has another question. Since
Hans is
section
on
coordinator,
fire.
yeah. Since section coordinators are part of the guild, how can we track hours for us to use for employer volunteer matching? That's a great question. I'm gonna let you do that one, Damien, also.
So we do not have the structure set up right now for collecting volunteer hours. It's a surprisingly more difficult and taxing duty than we had than you might expect. The board is going to be reviewing soon a proposal from me for volunteer software. Whatever solution the board approves, it will be a software solution where you can record your volunteer hours through a mobile app, something that will be very simple, very quick, and we'll be able to manage that through there. So you'll have like an account that will show all your volunteer hours that you've had. We'll have leaderboards, that kind of thing. So we are looking at an integrated volunteer management solution. Right now we have a lot of stuff on Sign Up Genius, and so we just want to make it one solution that's easier for everyone.
Thank you, Damien. Great question, Hans. More questions? More questions? Hans, you got another one?
And so I do say, by the way, if you are volunteering, please save your hours because we'll have a place to put them in soon.
Yes. Any other questions? Tracy. Hi, Tracy.
Hey, I just have a quick question.
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Awesome. So my quick question is with this new funding style of the board, like currently right now, we can only hold an X number of positions. In the when this funding board takes over and we get more funding, would it be available for non-director people to become more of a full-time staff, such as holding 3 or 4 roles at a time and only doing that work?
So your question is, with being a funding board and securing more funds, will we pay non-staff? Like,
No,
will
no,
we
no.
pay
My
out more
question is
staff?
if somebody already has a staff role, but
Hmm.
they want to add on, let's say 3 or 4 staff roles, get rid of their regular job, and just do that, would it be allowed under that new umbrella?
I mean, it could be allowed. I think our goal is that one person, it's a lot, and this is the piece about the board burning out and about our staff burning
Mm-hmm.
out, is doing too much and taking on too many duties. Of course, if that person was really invested and could balance all 4 of those roles and wanted to do that, they could do that. We would just have to have like lots of conversations to make sure that like each of the roles that they're taking on is getting the attention it deserves and requires. So as we secure more funding, the goal is to pay more staff and also increase our cost for staff. So like Damien mentioned, the executive director and Damien and Christopher, our executive director and artistic director, are being paid just above minimum wage. So not nearly as much as both positions should be making. And so our goal is also to increase their wage in addition to increasing the directors and managers' wage. And then, yes, the goal will be to, as we figure out more what staff roles are vital for our operations, to pay those out as well. I think your wheels are turning there, Tracy, and I love it. Damien, do you have more insight on that question?
The thing that we have to recognize is that every single job in this org, every single guild role takes more time than we think it does.
Mhm.
The executive director role, the artistic director role could be full-time right now, guaranteed. So to have somebody take on 3 or 4 roles is just not possible. Trust me, I've done it. I've done it multiple times over the past 2 years. You do not want to have that life. That's not what this org is about. It's about a community, and we need broad ideas from lots of folks. Um, and so we are trying to discourage our culture of doubling up, of people having way too many jobs at once, because it ends up being that every job they take is limited to the time they have. Um, the other thing in terms of our long-term development of these staff roles is that it's really important in the funding trajectory of a nonprofit when it gets its first full-time staff member. There are a lot of grants that we cannot apply for until we have our first full-time staff member, because that's a note of maturity. You are helping a family survive. There is a person living off your organization. That's a really important marker. And so we want to, as we are growing, rising the tide to lift all boats, we need to start thinking about how do we move to treating our folks equitably, treating them as professionals, paying them the same as other organizations. And what we need to do if the funding shows up is start moving to paying people full time or half time so that we can hire real professionals to run things that require professional expertise. And so that would be a 5 to 10 year goal if things work out right. That's not anytime soon. But that's we are on the same path as Seattle Symphony was. You know, in its infancy, it didn't have $1 million endowments. I don't think we're going to have, you know, $10 million of revenue in a year, but we could get 1 million within 5 years if we work at it.
Good questions, Tracy. Good question. Any other questions? Sounds like there's not any further questions. Thank you for those that did ask questions. They were really important questions. And of course, if you have more questions, we would gladly take them. You can email me at boardchair@rainbowcity.org. And you can also reach out to Damien at, oh,
Executive director at rainbowcity.org.
thanks, Damien. Thank you so much for coming to today's presentation. I hope you're as excited as we are in moving forward with our organization. There's a lot of changes happening, and we know change can be scary, and we hope this presentation helps answer a lot of questions for you, and you can see the growth that we really are on the path to success. Yeah. Damien, any other comments you want to add?
Thank you so much, everyone who attended and everyone who's watching this video later on. We really appreciate you. We work so hard as volunteers to build a stronger community for all of us. And so thank you, and we hope that you get engaged with the Guild, with the board, or promoting our concerts, or just telling folks about our mission. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.